this is TJ, otherwise known as Master Nobody and Master Nobody 3. I am bringing you a tournament review of the $1,000 guaranteed 4 max tournament on ACR from this past Sunday, May 21st, 2017. This was the first tournament session I played in quite a while, and I ended up taking this one down for $250 in a $11 buy-in. So that was really fun and exciting, and I wanted to do this review video mostly for myself to riff on a few ideas, look through some of the hands, but I hope that some people watch it. I know a select few of you I hope will watch it. You guys know who you are. And feel free to let me know what you think in the comments, anything like that. So let's jump right into it. We're starting with 150 big blind stacks. So we're starting relatively deep, but not absurdly deep. So my play is generally going to be geared towards playing loose and trying to win big pots in the early stages. As demonstrated here, I'm going to defend the 10-6 suited. I only need 15% pure equity to call. Flop nothing, give up. Sorry, 10-6 offsuit. Eights here, we definitely have a decision between 3-bet and call here. On deeper stacks in cash and in tournaments, I lean more towards a flat call here. I don't generally like flatting the small blind, but when stacks are this deep, you want to preserve your set mineability, and you don't want to 3-bet too much because being in position is a greater advantage. So I went for the flat call here and saw one of the worst flops we can possibly see and got out of the way. Opening up my buttons very wide, again, because of that positional advantage on deeper stacks. Should have gone to more like 50 or 55, especially in a $10 tournament against players that are going to be generally looser, but the 40 gets through here. Didn't go for the steal there, I don't think. Not got another open. Yeah, here I corrected my sizing to 50. Get a flat out of the small blind, which is always interesting, but on stacks like this, flatting the small can be a little more common. Good, not the best flop for my hand, but a good flop for my range. Dry king high boards heavily favor the pre-flop raiser, so I went for the c-bet. He calls. And at this point, I could double barrel, but I think I have better hands to do it with. I think if I check back, I can hit a queen or a jack and win fairly often. So it's an okay hand to check back, even though I have next to no showdown value. I still beat some of the gut shots, some 4-6 and things like that, but those are the hands I'm going to prefer to double barrel with, and certainly any clubs I'm going to double barrel with. So I check back the queen jack. Ace on the river, which is interesting because I pretty much have every ace in my range except ace king. I may choose to check back some ace highs on the flop, but I have a lot of aces in my range. But when he overbets the pot, I'm just folding. Very slight overbet, but still an overbet. 4x open. Normally I'd be defending queen 10, or queen 8, but not for that much. Another open with queen 10 offsuit. Again, dry jack high board favors the pre-flop raiser. I have 3 to a straight. I have an overcard. Lots of reasons to bet this flop. I turn a 9, which is, I guess a queen would be slightly better, but that's a really, really good card. Gives me an open-ended straight draw, of course. Bucket Boy had been playing a lot of hands at this point, so I expected him to have a lot of 4s, deuces, 5s through, he'd probably 3-bet 10s, but definitely 5s through 9s, things like that in his range, and plenty of weak jacks, jack 5 suited kind of thing. So I figured he had a lot of hands here that he was going to fold, so I went for the double barrel. I think I could have sized a little bigger on stacks this deep. He calls again. The river blanks out. I still have a lot of value hands here. I still have queens plus all the sets that are now boats. I have jacks, fours, deuces, nines. Yeah, I probably would see bet nines. Ace jack, I would triple barrel for value. King jack, I would triple barrel for value. That's queen jack is a maybe. Queen jack, I think, is the borderline. Queen jack, I'm not so sure I would triple barrel for value. But the point is I have a ton of value hands here on the river. So I can bluff with a fair amount of hands too and be fairly balanced. Queen 10 isn't a great. I mean, it's obviously I have no showdown value. It has some drawbacks as a bluff hand in that I block some of his weak hands, like, you know, king, queen, and 10, ace 10 of diamonds. I mean, you're really reaching its draws though. So I think it's a very reasonable hand to triple barrel bluff with and be totally balanced because I have so many value combos. I think a splashy kind of player would just lead into me with a 4 very often here, which he didn't. So I went for the triple. I sized pretty big, and he called me with the top of his range. He was trapping on the turn with jack 9. And then, of course, he has to just call on the river because now queens through aces beat him. So, yeah, that was just a standard. You know, it always sucks to triple barrel and lose, but this was a super standard hand, and I would not change anything about the way I play that hand. It's like we don't have anything interesting here for a while. Another flat from the smalls. This guy had been doing it a lot at this point, and I flopped the flush. A lot of people like to check back to trap when they make a huge hand on the flop, but I find that low stakes players generally fold to c-bets so rarely that, not so rarely, but at a low enough frequency that it's just not really worth it, and I should try to get value. And I did, and he folded. I think you're better off checking back the nut flush draw, or the nut flush. Certainly, I may consider checking back the nut flush to kind of protect my range a bit, because that hand, A, is more or less completely invulnerable, and B, blocks your opponent from having the nut flush draw. So he can very well still have the ace of hearts here. So more reason to bet because I can get action from the ace of hearts, but he doesn't have it, and we move on. Probably looking at a defend, now a walk. Definitely would have defended. Going for the big open sizes here. Could have made, this I think was an exploitative fold. I'd noticed that these two players, I normally in cash will open anything remotely playable on the button, and this I would consider, you know, it's connected, and one of the cards is somewhat high. So loose definition of playable, but I would normally open this on the button in cash. But these players had been playing very loose, so I determined that not to be worth it. This is a borderline open in the cutoff, which is under the gun in 4-max. So when I get 3-bet, obviously I'm tossing it. Now we've got aces. This was a nice situation, the min raise and then the min 3-bet. I think I actually, yeah, I did not intend to, did I min or just, yeah, I didn't min 4-bet, but I basically did. That was a misclick. I did not mean to do that. I think I was in another hand and then panicked and then like hit some buttons really quick. But the original razor folded. That obviously screams strength, which is kind of a shame. I wish I had paid attention to that. But I go half pot. I can definitely go like half pot, 2/3 pot jam with this SPR. So half pot, turn is a 5. I barrel again, and here it kind of clearly looks like I'm setting up to jam, and he folds. It's a shame he didn't have a king. I think he has a lot of kings in his range that I'm just stacking there, or doubling through, I should say. But it was not to be. Stacks are getting shallower. I'm playing 65 bigs at this point, so there are going to be some adjustments. Very small 3-bet size from this player, so I'm going to have to be defending a lot. King Queen's such a good hand to take a flop with, though, so I'm not considering 4-betting with a hand like this. Very interesting when he checks the ace-high board. I was really not sure how to respond to this, because typically when people 3-bet and then check an ace-high board, they either have, you know, a hand like 10s through kings and are pot controlling and, you know, trying not to value bluff, basically. Or they're pot controlling / trapping with an ace, typically a weak ace, or, you know, maybe even going for a check raise with an ace king or an ace 5 suited on this board. So I wasn't really sure how to respond to this. I did, however, determine that since I block kings and queens, it's quite likely that a king or a queen falling could improve me to the best hand. So I decided to check it back and hope to hit the turn, which I did not, so I folded. That's it. That's an interesting hand that I would probably like some input on. But I'm going to pick up the pace here because I'm hoping for this to be a pretty quick review. I flop top pair, I turn trips, half pot, could probably size a little bigger there, and then I size really big because I have a lot of misdraws, and he folds. This is odd. I'm curious what my cash range. I have my small blind ranges. Small blind versus cutoff. Yeah, I actually do in cash fold 7s in the small blind to a cutoff open. Those hands are really tough to play out of position. Against a bad player, I think I probably could have played it as a flat, especially when I am getting better than 20-1 implied odds to make a set. So I'd be putting in 100, and I would then have 2100 behind. See, I think flatting would have been the thing to do with that hand, but fold really isn't that bad, even though it seems really nitty. I get 3-bet again. This is one of the worst hands I can. It has some playability, but this is one of the worst hands I can have in the cutoff, so I just fold. Looks like we're playing this. Yep. I get 3-bet again, and again, this is, since my button range is so wide, I think I probably would be defending 8-6 suited, but 8-5 suited is just too bad, and I'm giving it up. Clear defend with the Jack-9 suited. And I flop nothing, and give up. I went for a 3-bet here. This player, I don't think had really been tested with 3-bets yet, and I hadn't been doing much 3-betting myself. So King 4 suited is definitely a light 3-bet, but it's not really that different from, you know, Ace 4 suited or King 9 suited. It's not all that different. You know, trying to get a lot of folds and just trying to get folds post-flop, get folds with C-bet, stuff like that. So I think it was a fine hand to pick on these stack sizes. He'd been pretty tight, so I'm not sure how accurate my read was that he would fold too much to 3-bets or too much to C-bets, 3-bet pots. But made a very interesting flop. I now have an open-ender, but a pretty bad open-ender. I have no backdoor flush draw, and I can be drawing to a chop against a king in any pair, essentially. So I decided to go for the check call. I figured that gave me the best chance of seeing all 5 cards without putting all the money in. But he checked back, which was great. I turn a king. So I now think I have the best hand a decent amount of the time. And I think even though players should consider bluffing with their, now that I think of it, really, I don't really think I am good that often here because, we're dealing with condensed ranges. It's always nice to have top pair, but we're dealing with condensed ranges. Any ace, any 9 has me crushed. Any 2 pair, I don't think he really has flushes, but really, really struggling to find hands that I beat. I pretty much beat 8s and down. If he called the 3-bet with a weird speculative hand, like a Jack 8 suited, Queen 8 suited kind of hand, I now beat those. But I'm really not beating that much. However, I don't really have a good hand to bluff with either, because he has plenty of aces and I'd say a fair amount of 9s in his range. So I'm just hoping to check to showdown at this point, and he does check again. River's a 10, so now I have kings and 10s with a queen kicker. But I still have a lot of the problems that I had on flop. I'm really just hoping he has, Jack 8 or something. It checks to showdown, and as it turns out, he actually got there with 10-8. This was definitely a strange hand. I don't really think I had many other options, though. It's a very wet board, and I think he was just getting it in with a lot of his hands on the flop. This hand, of course, seeing his hand, I could have probably won somehow, but I think just checking it down on a strange, very wet board like this is just fine, because bad players generally don't play their frequencies on boards this wet, even though they should. They just say, oh, look at this, I have, a pair and a straight draw, I'm not folding. So I did not think I was going to be able to generate much fold equity there. Looks like, did he bust this hand? No, he just got moved. Or something. Or did I get moved? No, he got moved. So we're playing 3-handed now, a little more dynamic. I am now opening small. I am fairly short now. I'm playing 31 bigs, so I'm opening pretty small now. Beautiful flop for my hand. C-bet, take it down. Against a min raise, I defend the king 4 suited. I think there's an argument for a 3-bet, but Bucket Boy had been playing really loose, so I didn't go for it. And a bad flop, and I just fold. I'm going to click through a bunch of these, unless I see, oh, okay, we just had a big pot there. Standard open, call. Ah, yes, this was a fun one. So this is obviously a decent flop for me, but I certainly don't have the top of my range either. So I think against a loose player like Bucket Boy, I would probably have value bet the flop, but I don't have that option because he goes and leads rather large into me, almost the full size of the pot. So I definitely only have one option here, and that's call. Raising would be unlikely to generate action from many worse hands, except draws that I'm like the, combo draws like a 6-8 of clubs. I'm basically flipping with, ace something with a club. A lot of hands that I'm pretty close in equity with. So I'm just going to call and play a turn with my bluff catcher. 4 changes very little. It decreases his 2-pair combos, which is nice. I think some people would just lead there with 2-pair, so it decreases the number of combos of ace-4. He only has, there are 2 aces and 2 4s left, so he only has 4 combos of ace-4, and that's only 1 combo of ace-4 suited would be ace-4 of hearts. And less combos of 5-4 as well. Only 2 combos of 5-4 suited. I think he might play 5-4 off as well. So it's actually a good card for my range. It takes away a lot of his 2-pair combos and gives him more bluffs, more draws, things like that. And additionally, if he were to have something like ace-jack, my equity increases because we now chop on a king or a queen river, for example. So he bets 500, which is more than a third of my stack. I'm really not sure if I am to jam for equity denial here. He's been quite splashy. You can already see his aggression factor, which is basically a percentage of how often a player bets or raises versus how often they fold. So his aggression factor is quite large. And I expected him to have a lot of bluffs, maybe even some sort of spaz with a 5, like a 5-6, something or other. So I didn't really consider folding against this player, especially seeing as he donk bet into me. This is not the top of my range, but it's pretty high up there. Especially when the 4 falls with what it does to his range. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to jam here for equity denial purposes if he has a draw, or if I'm supposed to call to induce the bluff shove on the river. I think my thinking at the time was that he had a lot of random bluffs. I don't know. I should probably just jam here because when I flat call, it makes it kind of obvious that I'm calling the river. River was a queen, which is a very good card for me because if he had been value betting ace-jack through ace-8, we are now chopping. So it's just a slam dunk. It's a slam dunk call once I get to the river, and he had complete air. He dubbed with stone cold air, and then river to queen, and just went all in. I don't understand why he would go all in when he now beats. He beats all my weak hands and loses to all my strong hands. But yeah, he just punts off an extra 1K to me on the river, and now I'm back over starting stack. Yeah, this looks like a standard blind versus blind bluff catch kind of hand. Interesting river spot. Everything pretty standard up to that point. He bets pretty big. He went bet, check, bet on this board. There are some 2 pairs that beat me. There's the queen jack. I'm not really sure. I think it's, especially on a board this wet, I think it's going to be really tough for me to generate value from any worse hand. I think in hindsight, I probably could have gotten a raise in, especially after beating him in that pot so recently. He may have been tilted enough to call if I made it, like if I made it 9-9-9. I think he may have called me with just a king. But it's tough because if I do raise, I'm more or less committed to his entire stack, which kind of sucks. But I just flat, and he turned a 5 into a bluff, which actually is kind of reasonable on this board. But I do take it down there. Yeah, I'm leaning on these guys a little bit because I have them covered by so much. Flop a queen here, go into trap mode. Have to start betting on the turn, get it through. But we're going to focus on just the larger pots here. Bad river, he bombs. Obviously, I'm bluff catching on the turn. Bad river, and he just blasts, so I have to fold. I do not want to squeeze here and get jammed on, so it's a call and a terrible flop. And a good turn. Oh, this was a fun hand. I make a great turn, and the 3-club flop checked through. So it's a really good flop for, it's a great turn card and a great situation for me. Kind of tough when he leads because he's uncapped. He can have flushes. He can have anything. And even though I have an open ender, it's only really it's a 6-out open ender because any hitting an ace or a 9 of clubs is no good, and he could already have me dead. However, I thought he can have a lot of mergey stuff, a lot of like 7s or jacks that he's just leading out with to kind of take it down here, like a lot of poor players do. So I decided to float one, and I hit the river was a club, and he checked, and I have a no-brainer bluff spot. I have honestly the stone worst hand that I can have, maybe other than like a 10-9. But yeah, I bluff and I take it down. He did not have the club. Get another player here. Oh, whoa. Did I miss something here? Okay. RJ opens. I'm 3-betting my ace-king relatively large because of his stack size. I want to leverage with my entire range. So I size big to force him to go all in or fold, basically. He clicks it back, so we're just getting it in. He had jacks, and I smashed the turn. So I am now over 2 starting stacks. Aces. Here I go for a more normal sized 3-bet because I'm not leveraging a stack here. And then I flop the overpair in just a little over 3 stack to pot ratio, like 3.2 SPR. I decided to go for the trap here, I think. Yeah. So having aces, it's a good spot to go for a trap here because you block a lot of the, well, I was going to say that you block a lot of the best ace-high combos, like ace-jack and ace-10, that your opponent may take one off here with. I don't know, it might be better to just trap with a queen because of the sort of board lockdown idea. I'm not so sure, but I decided to go for the trap here. He bites 1 street, and then I turn a boat. Interesting card because, I mean, I'm obviously still stacking queen no matter what, but I certainly look like I have more ace-king, like ace-jack of diamonds, I definitely have more aces in my range than he does, because he would probably check back an ace with decent showdown value on this flop, maybe. And especially since I have 2 aces, there's only 1 ace left in the deck, so it's really, really hard for him to have an ace. So if I was playing really high-level opponents, I think I would lead this card pretty often, just because I have so many more aces in my range than him. But he still has more queens in his range. Yeah, I'm not sure. But I decided that wouldn't be beneficial against this player because, a $10 tournament, he doesn't know me either. He doesn't know that I am a high-level player. So if he sees me just lead 700 here, and he has 9s, he's just going to say, oh, well, his ace-king got there, wow, and fold. So I went for the check. He checks through. I river quads. I don't see how I'm getting paid by anything here unless he has a queen and for some reason check the turn, which I think would be really weird to check the turn with a queen. I think very often he has jacks through, jacks and down, which are now a high card hand. So I think there's a case for, I think I should bet small. I think I min bet the river, actually. Yeah, I min bet the river to try and induce a bluff, to look like I'm like, oh, hey, I have jacks, or I have, king 10 of diamonds, I'm repping a blocker bet, essentially. He calls, and I take it down. I think he very well may have had like a king high or something and just, was looking me up there. I think I probably should have bet, in hindsight, I think something small, but not this small, like 300, maybe even like as high as 600, I think would be decent here. And I think I still get the king high calls. I still am going to stack a queen. Yeah, it's a tricky spot, but I get the one more big blind at least. You can see my stack steadily increasing here. What I love about this 4max format is it just gives you so many opportunities to steal, play pots with wide ranges, just a lot of opportunities for that. So I'm really coasting here and just steadily building up my stack, like is best to do in poker tournaments. Yeah, I get a steal there with Jack 3. Yeah, when he min 3-bets, it's kind of annoying, especially because he's so short, but I only need 14% equity to call. So I do defend. And he checks a king ace king flop, which is really weird. He should be c-betting his entire range on this board because he has such a huge range advantage. But I take one stab just to try and get him off queens, and then I turn a flush draw, and it's a great opportunity to actually, I probably should have checked back the turn here because he could be trapping with a king here. And when I bet that much, he's going to jam he may jam a lot of hands that he's going with. Maybe not so much. Some people will just go ahead and jam the ace queen and the ace jack there, but there's definitely a chance of him jamming, which would be bad because I get blown off my equity. So I think this actually would have been a better hand to check back, but I go for the dub and it works out. Obviously can't call after getting jammed on. So here I flop top pair on a very wet board, so it's a clear check back spot for me, especially against an active player such as Bucket Boy. Turn is not a good card, and he bets very large. but obviously my hand is under-repped, so I cannot fold the turn. The river is god-awful, so I just fold because my king is now in the, very small end of my distribution. Oh, we got some kangs. I decide to 3-bet smaller here, because really any 3-bet is kind of leveraging him, because he started the hand with like 19 bigs. He actually decided to defend, which is kind of weird. I'm going for the check jam on this flop. I think a check jam would look like a draw very often. Turn breaks out, I have to start going for value, and he just folds. Yeah, now I can just rip on him. With antes in, he has like 13 blinds, so that's an easy jam. Jam, snap call, I run out ace high, and he has jacks. This was fun. Limp check flush. I go for a small raise here. My hand is vulnerable, being such a low flush, so I want to charge any jack or higher of hearts. Potentially rep, a one card flush draw kind of hand with, to generate value from a 10. But he just folds. He probably had nothing. I decide to try to make this a little stronger by doing this instead of just jamming, but that really mattered very much. Yeah, he jams on me, and I lose. It was a really good flop for him, paired with the flush draw. I was behind on the flop, and he hit the 10 on the turn. Yeah, so I think we go back into sort of steal mode here. Bucket boy flats again, and then donks. I don't really have anything worth floating on that flop, so I give it up. Got aces again. I got aces a lot in this tournament. We're supposed to get them every, 221 hands or something, and we played 332 hands. I think I got aces 4 times, so running pretty good. Again, you can see we're cruising. That lead is sort of steadily increasing, especially with the antes in play here. There's more value in stealing the blinds. So that's a good reason to tune. Did I really? Wow. I guessed that he was defending his big blind not nearly enough. So I took a stab and took a stab. 10 of hearts is a good card to have on this flop, good blocker. But he jams and I fold. Got good cards here. I 3-bet. Here I did the leverage again. I 3-bet, he folds. Now we're kind of cruising along again. So we lost, I don't know, did Bucket Boy, what happened here? Oh, whoa, okay. I decided to limp here because Bucket Boy has 19 big blinds. So in that sort of 15, generally under 15 big blinds, I'm just going to rip my my good hands all in the small. But in that 15 to 25-ish big blind range, it becomes attractive to limp the small blind because you can limp jam some hands, and you take the all-in move away from your opponent. And he just checks. Awesome flop for me. I have an open ender and a backdoor flush draw. I min bet which is, you know, almost half pot in this with this size. He raises me, and I just go all in. I don't really have many other options here. I need to see all 5 cards. It would suck if I'm up against like a 10-8 and I'm you know, drawing, but yeah, I have a really good draw, so I want to put the max pressure on him, and he actually folds. Blind versus blind, some people get a little overexcited and would raise like ace-7 here and then go like, oh, whoa, no good, fold. So I'm really happy with my play there, and then he gets moved for whatever reason. We play one hand of heads up, and then we're back into cruise control. Get the jacks, take it down with a 3-bet. Small pot with 10s. Oh, I'm just jamming for 22 bigs effectively. I think it makes my range look a little weaker. I don't know, but playing 10s out of position can be kind of rough, so I'm happy with the rip. Steadily building. We're up over 10,000 now, which actually is kind of a lot in this tournament. Looks like I lost a decent sized pot there. Yeah, I went for the limp here. Tried to stab, and I called for a chop. Yeah, so the flop checks through. I bet here just because I can have some like ace-x in my range and I can have plenty of trap 10s. It's really hard for him to have any value at all here, because I mean he can check back weak kings. You know, some players will check back a 10 as a trap, but on these sizes it doesn't really make sense. And he's probably going to raise me with a lot of his aces, so it's really tough for him to have value here. So when he calls, I'm kind of suspicious, and I'm thinking he has a king fairly often, but maybe calling me with queen high. Queen high is actually a reasonable bluff catcher here. I check the river. He bets small. I need 20% equity to call, so I need to be chopping 40% of the time for a call to be profitable, because you know you only get half the pot. And it seemed reasonable to me. I didn't really think he would bet a king for value, but I think that's what he did. Yeah, it was a great value bet by him. I called him off for the chop. He's literally only beating hands that call for a chop. So that was a really good value bet on his part. Took a little hit there. Go for steal. Huge was a good player. He has good stats. As you can see, he was a bit of a thorn in my side. I think this would have been a reasonable spot to go for the check call, because I have some showdown value, especially on a board like this, and I have, well, but it's a board that I should see that pretty often because I have so many more aces than him. But he calls, and then I think I just give up here. So I'm kind of getting down now. I'm around 25 bigs. I go for the limp here, fold when raised. I sized up my open here to make it clear that I'm not folding to a jam. He only has under 8 bigs. So especially with a hand like 4s, I don't really want to give them the semblance of fold equity. Take it down there. Still just kind of cruising. Yeah, lost a big pot there. This was actually a tough spot. He jams on me, and I cannot fold. I only need 32% equity to call, and unless he has, I have 23% equity, even if he has aces. And all the times that I have live cards, I have way better than that. So it's a no-brainer call. Let's see what he has. We'll sweat it out. He's got the queen 10. That's a very bad flop for me. And he turns me dead. So I double up to enter. And I'm now down to 15 bigs, so we're playing the 15 bigs game. I expect him to be stealing a ton from the button, so this is a really profitable jam, and he folds. Go for just a rip there. I'm going to be ripping a lot of hands. I think with the antes, so there are only 3 of us, so the antes don't really make up a significant portion of the pot. So I think raising to get it in would have been okay too, but I'm happy to go the safe route and just jam. Definitely get called by like 7s and 6s and things like that. Here I pick up a hand, go for the min raise, and I get just jammed on this flop. So this hand really just played itself. You know, it's you know, some people get scared when their opponents check raise, but you know, I have queens. I realize I'm so high up in my distribution, and also on a board like this, people can have a lot of draws. So I'm never ever folding. And let's sweat it out. He had the draw, he had the jack-8, and didn't get there. So now I'm back in action. I have huge covered. I'm over 10K chips again. Oh. Looks like we got in a conflict here. We're around the money bubble here. I'm not exactly sure when the money bubble actually bursted, but oh, this hand, yeah. I'm not exactly sure when the money bubble bursted for sure, but it was somewhere around here. So I think this play may have had a lot to do with the money bubble. I wanted to put pressure on the 2 of them to not bust. So I rip for 300. So I rip for like 25 blinds effectively, which is fine with a hand this good and his range being so wide. I expect to get called by him pretty often and be ahead of, maybe not be ahead of his range, but be like 45% against his range. So I'm just fine if he calls. But he makes a crazy, crazy call, which I did not expect from a decent player to just call a 25 big blind rip here. I guess he might have put me on a lot of BS because of the money bubble and the dead money in the pot, and I don't know. I definitely don't think that's a profitable call for him against my range. Ace-9 is one of the worst hands I'll do that with. I don't know if I would do it with all my aces. I think I might fold. I might do it with more of the wheel aces because they have a little better equity. I might fold some of the ace, or just call, I should say, with like an ace-6 offsuit or an ace-7 offsuit. But I'm doing it with a lot of aces. So it's probably close, but on the money bubble, I don't think it's a long-term profitable call for him. So Smitty's in a great spot pre-flop. He has 48% equity in a 3-way all-in. Then he flops an open-ender and bricks, and we chop him up. So that was quite fortunate. And we're kind of back to cruising. Short stack comes to our table. I played that hand really nitty. I check back. That's probably. I should probably just be putting it in here, putting the pressure on him. I still have 6 outs with 2 cards to come. By the rule of 2 and 4, I have about 24% equity. I might have running I'm running 10 jack, I guess, too. So I should just be putting him in here and forcing him to make the call with ace high if he does have a better hand, or, you know, fold him off his jack 5 suiteds, whatever. This was a mistake. Happy, happy days. I do not want to call and run it 3 ways because he'd be getting a great price to call. So I re-jam over the top. He folds. We're running against 5s. And I win. It's going to be a lot of sort of steady cruise control here. Get to play ace-king against a very bad player. I don't know if I know how bad he is at this point, but I decided sometimes I'll go for a check call with an ace-king, but on a board this wet, I decided I'm probably not getting a fold. I guess maybe betting flop and then jamming turn, or betting turn and jamming river. I might be able to get a fold from like a 6-5, obviously if it bricks out or something. But I decided to bet fold rather than check call, and he raises, and I fold. Limper, and they both fold when I have queens. Devastating. So again, we're steadily chipping up, getting some steals. Looks like we played a pot there with the queen 8. Ah, Jimmy. I went for a small bet here because he'd been so loose. As you can see, it's 25% fold to c-bet, so that was definitely a value c-bet spot as far as I was concerned with the 8. Now I turn a queen. Which doesn't really change all that much. I'm now beating ace-8, which I was not beating before. That's really it, though. But I have such a good bluff catcher because I block a lot of his value combos. And when he min-bets the turn like that, I feel like he is blocker betting to get a cheap showdown very, very often. So I think I led. Yeah, I led almost half pot. Just assuming that my queen is good. I expected to be beat very, very rarely here. And he called. He actually rivered a jack and called. So that was a tricky little play that really that worked off well. I don't like to get. I only will get tricky against bad players. I would not take that line, even if I saw a decent player take that action. I don't think I would take that line because I know they would not be as transparent as a player like this. So that paid off. Cruising at 21,000 chips here. I was probably top 5 in overall tournament standings at this point. This was an interesting spot. Jimmy 4x's. As you can see, his VPIP and PFR, there's a huge gap. So he's only raising a small percentage of hands, and he's limping a lot. So even though he is on the button, I assigned him a very strong range pre-flop. And against a lot of players, like against a min-raise, for example, I would just jam this into him, expecting to have a lot of fold equity for, on his like 16 big blind stack. But I decided to just play flops because we still have some maneuverability. We have a little over 2 not quite 2 SPR, like 1.5 SPR actually. But there's nothing to do on this flop. I probably could have just front shoved to make sure that he doesn't bet half pot and then feel priced in, because half pot is like a little over 1/3 of his stack. So I think there's a case for front shoving here. Did I front shove actually? No, oh, he min bet, and then I just jammed. seemed, you know, seemed weak. I was happy to get in with my open ender here, and he actually called me with nines. I don't know. I think he may have like put me on a draw, but even against a draw, I'm well, actually, specifically with nines, he is ahead because he blocks 2 of my outs, but he's not really in that great of shape against draws. So it's not. It's. I don't think. I won't say it's a bad call, but I think it's definitely a marginal call. I break out, he wins. But I lose the chip lead, but I lose it to a very bad player, so I'm not really all that concerned, and I'm confident that I can get it back soon. I actually get it back right there when he loses a pot to Huge. Oh, looks like, oh yeah, this is a fun hand. He makes it 1,000, and I definitely could just go all in here. We shouldn't see the cards, but even though you know them already, I definitely could just rip 25 bigs in here against his pretty wide opening range. But I remembered what we saw from him earlier. We saw him raise, call it off for a lot of chips for like 20-something big blinds with ace-9 off. So I knew I had a little less fold equity than I should against this player, and I just laid down the ace-7. He got min 4-bet, and then he rips it in for 19 bigs. Jimmy calls. It's ace-jack against ace-10, and Jimmy takes him out. So he loses Huge, which is good because he was a tough player. And I'm pretty sure at this point we have 3 or 4 tables left, which of course in 4max is either 12 players or 16 players. So we're pretty deep here. I am going to pause the video for 1 second to get my